The little girl stood by the window, her tiny fingers pressed against the glass, watching other children laugh in the courtyard below. And for the first time in his life, he felt like he had completely failed her. Her name was Alina, and she had just turned 7, and she had only one wish. Not toys, not cake, not balloons. She wanted a mother, even if it was just for one day. That was the moment Daniel's world quietly shattered. If you believe in kindness, second chances, and the power of small acts that change lives, take a moment right now to like, comment, share, and subscribe to the channel. You never know who might need a story like this today. Daniel had always thought he was enough. After his wife left 3 years ago without a warning, without a goodbye, and without even looking back at their daughter, Daniel had stepped into both roles, father and mother. He learned how to braid hair, though clumsily. He packed lunches with mismatched snacks. He stayed up during fevers and told bedtime stories he barely had the energy to finish. But no matter how hard he tried, there were moments he couldn't fill. Like school events where other kids ran into their mother's arms, like nights when Alina asked innocent questions that had no gentle answers, and now her birthday. It started with a simple question one evening as Daniel was folding laundry on the couch. Alina sat beside him, unusually quiet, tracing patterns on the fabric with her small finger. After a long pause, she finally spoke, her voice so soft it almost disappeared. She didn't ask for much, she never did, but that night she whispered something that made his chest tighten. She said she just wanted to feel what it was like to have a mom at her birthday, like the other kids, just for one day. Daniel didn't respond immediately. He smiled instead, the kind of smile adults wear when they're trying not to break. He nodded slowly, pretending it was a simple request, something he could easily fix. But when Alina went to bed that night, he sat alone in the dim light of the living room, staring at nothing, because he knew he couldn't give her what she truly wanted. Or could he? The idea came to him not as a solution, but as desperation. At first it felt wrong, almost absurd, but the more he thought about it, the more it started to feel like the only way. He would hire someone, just for a day, someone kind, someone patient, someone who could pretend to be a mother long enough to give his daughter one perfect birthday. It wasn't about deception, it was about giving a child one memory that didn't hurt. The next few days were filled with hesitation and doubt. Daniel searched quietly, unsure of what he was even looking for. He wasn't seeking perfection, just warmth, just someone who could make a little girl feel seen. That's when he found her. Her name was Sophia. There was something different about her profile. It wasn't polished or overly professional. It was simple, almost honest in a way that felt rare. She didn't promise perfection. She simply described herself as someone who understood loneliness and knew how to sit with it. That line stayed with him. When they met, it wasn't what Daniel expected. Sophia didn't look like someone trying to impress anyone. She wore a simple outfit, her hair loosely tied back, her expression calm but observant. There was a quiet strength in her presence, something steady. She listened more than she spoke, and when Daniel finally explained the situation, his voice breaking slightly despite his efforts, she didn't interrupt, she didn't judge, she just nodded. And in her eyes, there was something he hadn't seen in a long time, understanding. But Sophia had her own story, one she didn't share right away, one that would slowly unfold and change everything. The morning of the birthday arrived with a strange mix of excitement and tension. Daniel barely slept the night before, replaying every possible outcome in his mind. He worried about what could go wrong. What if Alina sensed the truth? What if Sophia felt uncomfortable? What if the entire plan collapsed under the weight of its own fragility? But when Sophia arrived at their home, everything shifted. She didn't walk in like a stranger. She stepped in like she already understood the silence in the walls. Alina stood near the doorway, holding her favorite stuffed toy, her wide eyes filled with curiosity. For a brief moment, the world seemed to pause. Daniel held his breath, unsure of what would happen next. And then, Sophia did something unexpected. She didn't rush. She didn't force warmth. She simply knelt down to Alina's level and smiled gently. There was no performance in her eyes, only sincerity. And somehow, that was enough. Alina hesitated at first, as children do when they're unsure whether to trust something unfamiliar. But Sophia's calm presence slowly melted that hesitation. Within minutes, they were sitting together, flipping through a picture book, their heads close, as if they had known each other longer than just a few minutes. Daniel watched from a distance, something unfamiliar tightening in his chest. Not fear, not doubt, something softer. Hope. The day unfolded like a quiet miracle. Sophia helped Alina get ready, carefully brushing her hair and tying it with a ribbon that matched her dress. It wasn't perfect, but it didn't need to be. What mattered was the care behind it. For the first time, Daniel saw his daughter look at someone the way she used to look at her mother, with trust, with warmth, with a sense of belonging. The birthday party itself was small. A few classmates, simple decorations, a homemade cake that leaned slightly to one side. Nothing extravagant, but something was different. Alina was glowing. She laughed more freely, ran around with more confidence, and every now and then she would glance back just to make sure Sophia was still there. And Sophia always was, present, attentive, real. But beneath the surface, Daniel noticed something else. There were moments when Sophia seemed distant for just a second, like a memory had brushed past her, a shadow that came and went quickly, but not unnoticed. He didn't ask, not yet, because he realized something important that day. Sophia wasn't just pretending, she was feeling, and that made everything more complicated and more beautiful. As the sun began to set and the guests slowly left, the house fell into a peaceful quiet. Alina, exhausted but happy, leaned against Sophia, her small hand wrapped tightly around hers. And then she said something that neither of them were prepared for. She asked if Sophia could stay, not just today, but again tomorrow. Daniel felt his heart skip, because suddenly this wasn't just about one day anymore. It was becoming something deeper, something real. And real things have consequences.
That night, after Alina had fallen asleep with a soft smile still resting on her face, the house felt different. Warmer, fuller, but also heavier, with unspoken truths waiting to surface. Daniel found Sophia standing near the window, the same place where Alina had once stood alone. The city lights reflected softly in the glass, casting faint shadows across her face. For a moment, neither of them spoke. And then Sophia broke the silence, not with explanations, but with honesty. She told him that she understood Alina's wish more than he realized, because once she had been that child too. A child who waited by windows, a child who learned too early what absence felt like. But her story didn't end there. Sophia revealed that years ago she had lost her own daughter, not to abandonment, but to illness. A quiet, painful chapter of her life that left behind an emptiness she never quite learned how to fill. That was why she chose this work, not for money, but for moments. Moments where she could give what she once had and lost. Daniel didn't know what to say, because suddenly everything made sense. The way she looked at Alina, the way she stayed present, the way she never forced anything. She wasn't pretending to be a mother. She remembered how to be one. Days turned into a quiet routine. Sophia started visiting more often, not as an arrangement, but as something unspoken. She helped with homework, shared meals, and filled the spaces Daniel couldn't always reach. And slowly, something changed in him, too. He began to let go of the guilt he carried, the guilt of not being enough, because he realized something he hadn't allowed himself to believe before. Sometimes being enough doesn't mean doing everything alone. Sometimes it means letting others in. Alina changed as well. She smiled more, she laughed louder, and the loneliness that once lingered in her eyes slowly faded into something lighter. One evening, as they sat together watching the sunset, Alina leaned against both of them and whispered something so simple, yet so powerful. She said this felt like a real family, not perfect, but real. And in that moment, Daniel understood something that changed him forever. He had hired Sophia to play a role for a day, but she had given them something no one could ever fake: connection, healing, and a second chance at something they both thought they had lost. Before this story ends, if it touched your heart even a little, please take a moment to like, comment, and share it. You never know who might be silently waiting for hope. And a special request, comment below where you're watching from and tell us if you believe that strangers can become family, because sometimes they really do. In the end, Sophia didn't replace anyone. She didn't erase the past, but she helped them build something new, something honest, something gentle, and something that proved that even the smallest act of kindness, a single yes to a little girl's wish, can ripple into a lifetime of change. And as the lights dimmed and the night wrapped around their home, there was no longer a little girl standing alone by the window. There was a family, not by blood, but by choice. And sometimes that's even stronger.